"You can move to the laundry room or leave," Dad said at the Thanksgiving table, voice trembling but determined. The sentence landed like a knife between us. My fork froze midair. Jacob's smirk widened, like he'd just won something he'd been plotting for weeks. Stephanie adjusted her napkin, pretending to look innocent. And my father, the man I'd spent 5 years caring for, couldn't even meet my eyes. That night, I packed my bags, but before that, before everything went wrong, I was just a daughter doing what daughters are supposed to do. My name is Camilla, and for the last 5 years I've lived with my dad in Kansas City, Missouri. Not because I was lazy or lost, but because he needed me. When Mom passed away, the world split open. Dad tried to hold it together, but then came the diabetes, the high blood pressure, and the pile of medications that looked more like rent than treatment. His insurance barely covered anything. Someone had to step in, and that someone was me. I paid the bills. I handled the groceries, the utilities, the mortgage, the prescriptions. Everything. Between my job as a dental hygienist downtown and the side shifts I picked up at a clinic on weekends, I managed to keep us afloat. Jacob didn't. He lived comfortably in Denver with his wife. Stephanie, fancy job, big house, expensive wine glasses. He called twice a year, sent a fruit basket when Dad got sick, and never once asked, "Do you need help?" Still, I didn't complain. Dad was my responsibility, my family. When he smiled at me and said, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Camilla," it felt worth it. Until one day, his phone rang, and everything changed. I remember the sound of his laugh that evening, echoing from the living room. "Jacob!" "What a surprise," he said. I stayed in the kitchen, stirring the soup, smiling to myself. Maybe, finally, my brother wanted to reconnect, but the laughter faded. The warmth drained from Dad's face. By the time he hung up, he looked uneasy. "Everything okay?" I asked. He nodded slowly, then hesitated. "Jacob and Stephanie? They're having some financial trouble. They might move back here for a while." "Just temporarily? Move back?" My voice cracked. "Here? Where else would they go?" He said softly, "They're family. Family helps family." The words hit me hard, because I was family too. And hadn't I been helping all along? Still, I nodded. "Sure, temporary." 3 weeks later, their truck rolled into our driveway, 2 weeks early. Stephanie stepped out first, arms crossed, wearing a coat that screamed city money. Her expression made it clear. This house was beneath her. "Hey, sis," Jacob called, unloading boxes like he was doing us a favor. "Figured we'd get here early." Dad came out, his nervous smile trembling. "Camilla, honey, they're just going to get settled. We'll figure out rooms later." "Rooms?" I asked, dread creeping in. Stephanie glanced around, unimpressed. "The storage room's tiny, no closet." "It wouldn't work," Jacob added cheerfully. "We were thinking you could take the laundry room for a bit. It's only temporary." The laundry room, 10 feet wide, smelling of bleach and rust. I waited for Dad to defend me. He didn't. He just looked tired. "It's only for a while, Mija. You understand, right?" No, I didn't, but I said nothing. Because sometimes silence is the only dignity you have left. That night, I lay on a thin futon wedged between the washer and the wall. My clothes hung on a tension rod above the sink. Every time the water heater clicked on, the pipes moaned like the house itself pitied me. Through the thin walls, I could hear laughter, Jacob's deep voice, Stephanie's fake giggle, and Dad's weary attempts to sound happy. I stared at the ceiling until morning, the smell of detergent thick in the air, and thought, I've given everything. And now, I don't even have a room. Outside, the Kansas City cold pressed against the windows, sharp as truth, and I knew then, Thanksgiving wouldn't be a celebration. It would be my eviction notice. The turkey came out dry, and the silence came out worse. Steam drifted in timid little ghosts from Stephanie's quinoa stuffing, and Dad kept clearing his throat like he could cough up a backbone. I stood at the counter with the carving knife, watching a stranger rearrange my kitchen as if it had always been hers. "I'm doing Thanksgiving this year," Stephanie announced, wrist flicking like a game show host. "No offense, Camilla, but we're going lighter, healthier." "My grandmother's stuffing, Dad's favorite," I started. "That old recipe?" She smiled without warmth. "Butter is not love." Dad tried for a laugh that couldn't find a landing. "She's right, Mija. It's good for me." "Right. Because nothing says gratitude like erasing the only tradition that still tastes like family." We ate in a choreographed politeness that squeaked. Jacob kept praising everything like compliments might pay rent. Stephanie quizzed Dad about his blood sugar as if she'd ever once picked up his prescriptions. I kept my jaw steady and my hands busier than my mouth. After dinner, I stacked plates in the sink. In the living room, voices lowered and sharpened, glass under a boot. "Not just a few months," Jacob said. "We're already settled." "Fair," Stephanie added. "It's crowded." I dried my hands, walked to the doorway. "What's fair? What's crowded?" Dad's eyes begged a truce he hadn't earned. "Camilla, they might stay longer." "How long is longer?" "Indefinitely," Stephanie said, and that word fit her perfectly. Polished, unapologetic, final. "Until we figure things out." My chest went tight. "So what happens to me?" Jacob sat back in Dad's chair like he'd always owned it. "You're the only one here without a spouse. It doesn't make sense for you to take up a whole bedroom." "This is my home," I said. "It's Dad's home," Jacob corrected, mild as poison in tea. "We're here to really help him, not just throw money at the problem." Something inside me snapped like a thin, old rubber band. "Throw money? Is that what you think I've been doing?" Dad lifted a trembling hand. "Camilla, please, no." The word came out steady. "You don't get to please me after this?" Jacob shrugged, almost cheerful. "Then it's simple. You can move to the laundry room. Or leave." And Dad, staring at his folded napkin, whispered the worst part. "You understand, don't you?" The room tilted, not from shock, but clarity. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I walked down the hall, past the bedroom that had been mine until two people decided it wasn't, and into the laundry room that hummed like a cheap motel. I packed fast. 2 suitcases, my scrubs, the picture of Mom that no one had ever dared touch, the binder with Dad's insurance cards and appointment notes, muscle memory slipping it into my bag before my heart could argue. At my door, Dad hovered, small in his own house. "You don't have to go tonight," he said. "Sleep on it." "I've been sleeping on concrete for 2 weeks," I said. "I'm awake now." "I'm not choosing sides. You chose silence," I answered. It had a side. Outside, November hit my face like a warning. I loaded the trunk. Jacob leaned in the doorway with a smirk he hadn't yet learned to hide. Stephanie pretended to check her phone. Family, framed by a porch light that made everyone look colder. "I'll still pay for your medications this month," I told Dad, voice low. "I'm not abandoning you, but I'm not staying where I'm not wanted." He nodded, a man agreeing to a cost he didn't calculate. I got in the car and the house shrank in the rear view, all the way down to the laundry room's one little window. Kelly opened her apartment door in a hoodie in concern. "No questions, just arms." I collapsed into them because you can be strong in public and still need to fall apart somewhere with carpet. We made tea at midnight. I sat at her table, hands wrapped around heat, inventorying losses and finding one stubborn win. I had left. "Stay as long as you need," she said. The kettle clicked. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from the pharmacy. Payment declined. My stomach flipped, not from fear, this time from an idea beginning to take shape, sharp and necessary. Dad thought Medicare covered most of it. Jacob thought I threw money at problems. Stephanie thought butter was the enemy. Tomorrow, I thought, I'll pull my bank statements. I'll total the mortgage, the utilities, the premiums, the copays, the pills that keep a heart beating steady. I'll put a price on the last 3 years, and then I'll let silence do the explaining they never allowed me. I sipped the tea. Outside, the city breathed like a calmer house. Let them handle the bills they insisted were easy. Let them discover what really helping costs. Kelly didn't need an explanation when I showed up at her door that night, clutching 2 suitcases and the remains of my pride. She just opened her arms. "You're staying," she said. No questions, no pity, just warmth. But the next morning, the first voicemail from Dad came. "Camilla, the pharmacy says my payment didn't go through." My heart sank. That was my card. I promised to handle it. But when I hung up, something clicked inside me. Dad didn't even know I'd been paying. He genuinely believed Medicare covered everything. I opened my laptop, called up my bank records, and let the numbers slap me across the face. Every month for 3 years, mortgage, insurance, medication, utilities, $2,500 to $3,000 like clockwork, $90,000 in total. And not a soul besides me knew. "Camilla," Kelly whispered, looking at the screen. "You've been paying for your dad's entire life." I nodded. "And they thought I was just chipping in." She frowned. "What are you going to do?" "Let them find out." I ignored the next pharmacy call. Then the next. By day 7, Jacob's name flashed on my phone. "Camilla, what the hell?" The pharmacy quoted me $800 for Dad's meds. "That's correct," I said evenly. "What?" "That can't be right. Medicare doesn't cover everything. Those are the out-of-pocket costs I've been paying every month for 3 years. He went quiet. I could almost hear him doing the math. "That's like 10 grand a year," he said softly. "Closer to 30 when you add insurance, utilities, and groceries." Silence again. Then weakly, "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you wouldn't have listened." That night, guilt tried to creep back in. I pictured Dad without his blood pressure meds, his glucose levels spiking. My stomach twisted. But then my phone buzzed again, a text from Stephanie. "This is ridiculous. Your father's health is at stake. Grow up." The guilt vanished instantly. 2 days later, Dad called again. "Camilla, I'm running out of my medication." "You can ask Jacob to pay for now," I said quietly. I did. "He says they can't afford it yet." "Oh," I said. "That's unfortunate." The next morning, the mortgage bounced. The utilities followed. When Dad called, his voice shook. "Camilla, what's going on?" "The bank says the payment didn't go through." "It didn't," I said, "because I canceled it." "But the house is yours, Dad. And so are the bills." There was a long silence. "How much have you been paying?" "For everything?" "About $2,500 a month, sometimes more." He exhaled hard. "Camilla, I didn't know. I thought you were just helping with groceries." "I know. You were too busy believing in Jacob's promises." I hung up before the tears could fall. That night, Kelly sat beside me on the couch, handing me ice cream straight from the tub. "You're not cruel," she said softly. "You're finally letting people feel what you've been carrying." She was right. For years I'd been the invisible scaffolding of that house, holding it up while everyone else admired the view. Now the walls were creaking, and for once it wasn't my problem to fix. 12 days after I left, there was a knock at Kelly's door. Loud, impatient, rehearsed. I looked through the peephole and saw her, Stephanie, standing in designer boots and a storm of fury. I opened the door halfway. "We need to talk," she snapped. "About what?" "About the fact that you've left your father high and dry," she said, stepping inside uninvited. "The utilities are overdue, the pharmacy's demanding payment, and Jacob and I don't have $800 lying around." I folded my arms. "You're right. That must be hard. This isn't funny," she hissed. "You can't just walk away like this." "It's abandonment." The word hit me like static, absurd and painful at once. "Abandonment? You mean the way you two abandoned me in my own house?" Her chin lifted. "That's different. We needed the space." I let out a bitter laugh. "And I needed a home. But you didn't care about that." She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. "You threw away my lunch bag, took my room, treated me like a nuisance. I paid every bill for 5 years and you treated me like I was freeloading in my own home. Now that I've stopped paying, suddenly you remember I exist." Stephanie flushed red. "We didn't know how much you were contributing. Jacob said it was a lot, but a lot doesn't cover it," I cut in. $90,000. That's how much I spent taking care of Dad. I can show you the bank statements." Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. For the first time since they'd moved in, she looked small. "I didn't realize. That's the problem," I said quietly. "None of you realized. Because none of you ever asked." She sank onto Kelly's couch, deflated. "So what now?" "Now?" I said. "You figure it out. You and Jacob wanted to take over, remember? You told me you were there to really help. Well, help looks like this. Bills, meds, responsibility." She stared at the floor. "You want an apology?" "No, I want awareness. I want respect. But honestly, I don't expect either." Stephanie stood after a moment, her composure cracking. "You'll regret this," she said, but even she didn't sound convinced. When she left, Kelly peeked from her room, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "How'd it go?" "I think she finally saw the price tag," I said. That night, Dad called. His voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. "Camilla, I owe you an apology." "Okay," I said softly, waiting. "I had no idea what you were doing for me." "None. I thought Medicare covered most of it. I thought you were just helping out a little." Jacob showed me some numbers, and I can't believe it. I can't believe what I let happen. His voice cracked. "You saved my life, and I repaid you by choosing them over you. I'm so sorry." The words I'd wanted for months finally arrived, but they didn't feel like victory. They just felt heavy. "Dad," I said gently, "I'll pay for your medications this month. Just this month. After that, you and Jacob need to figure out a plan. Cheaper prescriptions, assistance programs, something." "I can't keep doing this. I understand," he said. "Thank you, Camilla." When we hung up, I sat in silence, the phone still warm in my hand. For years, my worth had been measured in invoices and prescriptions, in things I could fix or pay for. But that night, I understood something new. My value didn't come from what I provided. It came from what I refused to give anymore. I wasn't their safety net. I wasn't their backup plan. I was done being the solution to a problem I didn't create. 3 months passed. In that time, peace found me in pieces. One grocery trip, one quiet night, one deep breath at a time. My tiny apartment smelled like candles and detergent instead of guilt. I worked 2 jobs, the dental clinic by day and a catering office on weekends. And for the first time in years, every paycheck went into my account. Dad called occasionally, his voice calmer now. He'd been approved for assistance programs covering most of his medication. Jacob started contributing to the mortgage. And Stephanie? She was gone. Back to Denver, back to her reflection. Then one afternoon, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Is this Camilla? A woman asked. This is Margaret, your father's home aide. I wanted to reach out because he's been saying some concerning things. I straightened. What kind of things? He keeps telling people you abandoned him, she said. That you refused to help him, that you're selfish. My breath caught. He said that? Yes, I thought you should know. I thanked her and hung up, hands trembling. My father, the same man who'd just apologized weeks earlier, was now rewriting the story. Turning himself into the victim again, I called Jacob immediately. Have you talked to Dad lately? Yeah, last week. He said he misses you. Did he also tell you he's been calling me selfish? Jacob hesitated. He's been upset. You know how he gets? I know exactly how he gets, I said. He rewrites history when the truth makes him uncomfortable. That night, I stopped crying and started typing. I gathered every receipt, every bank statement, every insurance payment, every medication charge. 3 years of proof, $90,000 of truth. Then I sent it to Dad, and Jacob, and every relative who'd been whispering about how I'd abandoned my poor father. Subject: setting the record straight. No emotion. No bitterness. Just facts. Numbers, dates, totals. Let the math tell the story. I was done repeating. By morning, my phone exploded. Aunts, uncles, cousins, shocked, apologetic, furious at Dad for lying. The silence that followed was the first real justice I'd ever felt. 2 days later, Dad texted, "We need to talk. We met at a coffee shop." He looked smaller somehow, as if the truth had taken up the space pride used to fill. That email, he began. You didn't have to humiliate me. I didn't humiliate you, I said calmly. You did that yourself when you lied. He looked away, stirring a cup he wouldn't drink. I was angry. I felt abandoned. You told me to move to the laundry room, I reminded him. You made that choice, not me. He swallowed hard. You're right. Do you finally understand what I did for you? I asked quietly. He met my eyes. Old, weary, ashamed. Yes, you gave everything and I took it for granted. I treated you like a caretaker, not a daughter. I failed you, I nodded. Then this is where we start over. You don't owe me gratitude. You owe me honesty. For the first time, he didn't argue. Months later, summer bloomed. Dad sold the old house and moved into a small senior apartment. Jacob found steady work and started paying his own bills. I was promoted to operations manager at the catering company, finally earning enough to breathe. When Dad texted one evening, "Dinner at my place?" "Just you and me," I went. He'd made pot roast, my favorite. There were no apologies, no speeches. Just quiet conversation, soft laughter, the kind of peace that doesn't demand proof. Before I left, he said, "You were right to leave." It saved both of us, I smiled. It saved me first. That night back in my apartment, I stood by the window watching the lights of Kansas City flicker like little chances waiting to be taken. For the first time in years, I wasn't anyone's safety net. I wasn't the responsible one holding everything together. I was just Camilla, the daughter who finally chose herself. And that, I realized, was the truest kind of family I'd ever have.